The regular season for 2025 fantasy football is all but over, so it is time to start taking a look at the 2025 class. And we're going to start today with my top 5 prospects at the quarterback position. Now, there are 2 at the top that I feel pretty good about, and then it just is anyone's guess after that. So let's start with the 2 guys at the top. I think both of these players are locks for top 5. Cam Ward is the first one. He's transferred multiple times. Was at Washington State the year prior, but this move to Miami was the best thing that he could have done for his career. 6'2", 223 pounds. So he's got very solid size, a good build to him. And man, he has put up numbers so far this year. 4,123 yards, 36 touchdowns to only 7 interceptions. Now, when we're talking about Cam Ward, this is not necessarily a ridiculous athlete that's going to run for tons of yards, but I do think he's an underrated athlete that will be able to pick up extra yards as needed, scramble a little bit here and there. Think of a 200-yard rusher in the NFL, 250, something along those lines. So not completely immobile, but he's not necessarily somebody that you're going to expect to put up 500-plus rushing yards at the quarterback position. Regardless, there's tons of teams that are looking for top-tier quarterbacks. He's one of the best bets that we have in this class. Now, I'm not going to put him in the Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May type of conversation. I don't think either one of those guys quite reaches that level, but I think he is a very good quarterback prospect that does have a pretty high ceiling as both an NFL player and both as a fantasy player. I mentioned before, you're not going to get the rushing upside, but I think he'll run enough. But specifically passing the football, he's a pretty accurate thrower of the ball. He can throw off platform, got a really strong arm. So I like what I'm seeing so far in my tape watching of Cam Ward. Next up is a very familiar name in college football circles, and you may have heard of his dad as well. Shedeur Sanders, nearly 4,000 passing yards so far this season, 3,926, 35 touchdowns to only 8 interceptions. Another guy that is 6'2", 215 pounds here. And we saw it last year at Colorado. He had a really solid season. Some thought that maybe he would come out, maybe he would declare last year. He didn't. He decided to go back to school. And I think that was a good choice on his part. Last year's class was a much better class. This year, he has a chance to potentially be the number 1 overall pick. I expect both him and Cam Ward to be selected in the top 5 of this year's class. Another guy that also is similar to somewhat Cam Ward. I think he's maybe a little bit more accurate than Cam Ward is, but I think Cam Ward has maybe a little bit of a stronger arm, but both guys can get it done in all areas of the passing game. But it's the rushing game where, once again, it's just a little bit lackluster. He's not somebody that's going to rush for a lot of yards. In fact, he has negative yards this year. Now, granted, it's college football. They count sacks as negative yards, but another guy that I would expect to be in the 150 to 200-yard range. He can pick him up and put him down when he needs to, but not a crazy athlete at the quarterback position. Definitely a pass-first quarterback. Well, after this point, it's anyone's guess. Right now, there's no other quarterbacks that I think for sure are going to go in the first round, but we see 1 or 2 more almost every year now fall into the first round. The next guy that has a shot to do it is Jalen Milroe. Now, Milroe, he is the opposite of the other 2 guys that we just talked about. Fantasy football-wise, he could be nuts. When we're talking about athlete, several games in college this year where he rushed, not threw, rushed for over 100 yards. And in fact, in the LSU game, 185 and 4 rushing touchdowns. This guy, when you look at him, 225 pounds, yeah, he looks like a running back out there. Now, he's not completely inept as a thrower. He can get the job done, but he is not even close to the level of the other 2 guys. And that's going to be the biggest question at the next level. Can he be effective enough in the pocket as a passer to be a legitimate NFL quarterback? And that's what we just don't know. He would have to take some really big steps forward, and some guys can do that. Think of guys like Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, and other guys just can't make that adjustment. It's hard to do at the NFL level, but as far as for fantasy goes, Jalen Milroe has a ton of upside on the ground alone. At 4 right now, I have Quinn Ewers, a guy that's been talked about for years. And another guy that I'm glad went back to school. Watching his tape, I do think he's improved this season compared to what we saw last year. He's a little bit better with his footwork, a little bit better with his accuracy. So I've been enthused with what I've seen out of Quinn Ewers. Now, still makes too many mistakes at times. And honestly, I'm not even confident he's the best quarterback on his own team. I think next year we're going to be getting Arch Manning, who could easily be the 101 in next year's NFL draft. But at 6'2", 210, he's got adequate size. Then you're looking at his totals so far this year. Did miss a little bit of time due to injury. It's only 2,300 passing yards, but 24 touchdowns to only 7 interceptions. So when you factor in the a little bit of missed time, not a ton, but a little bit of missed time, those are pretty solid numbers overall. Another guy that's going to be more like the first two, not so much a great athlete, but a good deliverer of the football. And when we talk about arm strength, there's nobody in this class that is better arm strength wise than Quinn Ewers. He can make every throw. It's just, is he going to make good decisions, and he's going to get it there accurately and on time? That's going to be the biggest thing to try to figure out with Quinn Ewers. At number 5, there's a few different guys that we could have put in here, but we ended up going with Garrett Nussmeier, LSU quarterback, 6'2". So every guy we talked about was 6'2", 200 pounds here. Has pretty solid numbers, 3,700 yards, 26 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. When we're talking about a guy with arm talent, he's got great arm talent. He can throw the ball anywhere. I don't think he's quite to the level of a Quinn Ewers, but he's not crazy far off either. So he's a pretty solid player overall. Not another guy that's going to be running a lot, but I do worry that, I mean, it's almost, I feel like I'm repeating myself talking about Quinn Ewers because he's got a lot of the same issues with decision making. Can't always make the off-platform throws, relies on arm strength a little too much. So very similar prospects for those two guys. The only difference is one guy was the top high school prospect coming out, and the other guy, this is his first year playing consistently at quarterback for any team. So that's going to be the big difference between those two guys. It's very close in this class for the first two. Big gap, and then a big tier right after that of a lot of guys. We didn't get to Carson Beck. We didn't get to Drew Aller. There's a lot of guys that could be a part of this group, but it's kind of a mess after those top two. But I think the top two are truly locked in. I'm excited to announce we are extending our Cyber Monday deal where you get 40% off a year-long membership or a monthly membership at dynastynerds.com. That's right. So you get the GM tool, you get the extra podcast, you get the film room, you get all kinds of great stuff for 40% off. So go right now, dynastynerds.com, and use promo code CYBER40. That's promo code CYBER40. Use it today because we're only extending it one additional week. Next Thursday, December 12th, it's over. So get it in now while you still can.